Welcome to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching Podcast, where we're all about helping healthcare professionals like you create positive change at work, at home, and everywhere in between.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to a new episode for the Transforming Healthcare Coaching Podcast. And we're going to piggyback on some of the things that we talked about in previous episodes. And it's too bad we don't have Griselda part of this episode today, as we had mentioned that Griselda would do a sneak peek on values, but maybe we'll get her to come in and talk another time about that. But today I'm joined by Amy and Lily, and we're going to talk about values and aligning your healthcare career with your individual core values, because our values play such a big role into how dynamics happen in teams, but also what makes you happy and making sure that your journey in healthcare and your personal life are aligned and purposeful and that you're staying joyful. And so to start off today, I'd like to kind of ask Amy and Lily, how can you identify your core values as a healthcare professional? Because I feel that a lot of people may not know what their actual values are.
Well, this is such an important topic. It's so important to have your inner world match your outer world, and values are really key for that. Because when you're not aligned and something is off in your career, values can really be a good place to start. So it's a good place to really reflect and think about really what's important to you and what brings that meaning and purpose to your work. And even not thinking of the company you work with, but first just think about yourself. And then you might say, well, what values? What do you mean? You could even do a Google. What are some values that I might find? And get a list and see what resonates with you. It could be, I really just want that one-on-one patient care. I want to really connect with the people that I work with. Compassion. I like these things, that whatever it is that makes you tick. So kind of first doing an assessment of yourself and finding out what's truly important to you. Maybe pick the top 5 to 7 and start there.
I just want to normalize this really a hard thing, I think, for many healthcare professionals to talk about values because they never have done the inner work to think about it. It's only in some professional development circles that people do spend the time to reflect and refine and name what these values are. And I have to admit, even for me, I did not really think about what my true values really were until I started being a client myself and going through coaching and identified them. And the way she helped me was actually through story, through understanding our lived experience. Then the values become very transparent. Because also as coaches, we do this often quite a bit for our clients. We reflect back to what we see in what they've told us. And that's that external holding up a mirror and realizing, oh yeah, you're totally right. The other way we often teach students and people in training is the intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic motivation. So for those of you who are in academic centers and places or affiliated with learning, we often talk about extrinsic motivations or things like salary or bonuses and just financial compensation. But intrinsic is really actually what gets you up in the day. For most people, it's and for most healthcare professionals, it's something related to helping others, to have agency, to be the one to make a difference, whether it be your technical skills, your verbal skills, your communication skills, your surgical skills. It's going to be something related for how you help people. And so that giving characteristic is usually a pretty strong value for most healthcare professionals that we've seen.
It's very interesting that, your values come up when it's kind of posed to you, like, what are your values? I find that a lot of healthcare professionals start to become more aware of what their values are is when they're actually struggling with burnout. That seems to be a big trigger for people because they're getting really frustrated with the days to day at work, and then realizing that a lot of what the issues are is just the values are not lining up. Whether that be the financial pay and your value to what you give to the organization, and it's not being shown, it's not being respected. It may be that you're being rushed with patients, and what Amy said, like, compassion is a big value for you. And so when those things get violated, you get really frustrated, you get really overwhelmed. And I find that to be a tipping point for a lot of people. And it's very helpful to hear that you can address these values by working with a coach, by a simple Google search, like Amy mentioned, just to see what's coming up for you and then start to name it. And I think it's funny that we all have that in common, is that I also had to do my own work with my own coach to say what my values are and then I started to realize that a lot of the things that were the cause of my burnout were because my values were not aligned, and that a lot of my values were the healthcare system. I want a serving healthcare system for both the professionals that work for it, but also the patients. And we all know that healthcare is so sick. So that was a very important thing for me, and realizing that a lot of my frustration was because of the system, not because of something else. And that I was an agency and I had my own ability to actually make changes for myself to live a happier life. So that was very important for me.
Can I just add one more thing about identifying our core values as a healthcare professional? We really then start to realize it becomes our professional identity. And from that point, we can guide our decisions.
Yeah.
They actually do a lot of research within the academic centers about what is professional identity formation, whether it's you're an educator, you're a researcher, you're a clinician. There are certain phenotypes and things about that process and the trauma that you can have or the moral injury that you can sustain during those developmental times that you do need some way of processing and figuring out how you want to show up and be different in your own personal journey. The reality is not everything has to be the way it was for your mentors, for example, or your advisors. It can be different for you. You are a unique individual that can bring something different to the table. And yet we don't often think about how we process that journey of our professional identity formation. So that's a great point, Amy.
A lot of people are looking for people to make changes for you, but we have to make changes for ourselves to live happier lives. And this is what we all advocate for our patients. I'm a big advocate and tell my patients that you have to be your own advocate for your own health. So though I'm recommending you see orthopedics, and I spoke to the surgeon and they said their office is going to call you, don't trust that. Call Monday morning and make it happen for yourself. And it's the same thing for your own life. I always tell people you have to be on top of yourself to make sure you're living the life that you want to live. You don't have to be annoying about it, but taking that step for yourself. You know, I just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you. Seriously. It means a lot that you're here with us, diving into these real conversations about life and healthcare. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, we'd love to have you join our regular crew. Just hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening from. It really helps us keep these authentic conversations going. All right, where were we? So I'm also curious what strategies that healthcare professionals use or that you use yourself to ensure kind of your career choices align with your personal values.
I think it's really important as you're looking to align in your next organization or department or whatever you're connected with to really do your homework and see, number one, what do they say their values are? What's their mission? Does that seem to align? But also do some networking and talk to people. Say, what is it like for you to work at this place? How is that management in that area? To really do your investigation and do some informational interviews. And it's information gathering. And again, from there, you can make your choices.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think I really knew that I had such values of freedom and also caregiving, like in terms of developing other people. Some of these personality assessments, ironically enough, my prototype is coach. So I don't think I knew I was a coach until many years later. But on these personality assessments, they told me that's what I was. I'm like, oh, I think the reason why end up becoming an educator is because I like to help people become the best versions of themselves clinically, academically, personally. Coaching is not that much different in terms of it's about developing the person. And then for me, I think freedom is one of my values. And that's why I love my national organizations. I do a lot of national organizational work within first emergency medicine and now critical care. The reason why I stay with these organizations is because there is power and freedom to know that there is such a big world out there that you are part of the community and that you can give back and get in return. And that networking, like Amy said, is really important. So for me, it aligns in that way. And I know for a lot of people have different reasons and different values for why they do organizational medicine or why they do choose a career in research. For some people, inquiry is an important value. For other clients of ours, it's really about the relationship is the most important thing. So they're really heart-centered, relationship-centered leaders. For other people, it's service. So there's just a lot of willingness to be of a service mindset as they approach anything in their life. So it does help center whenever you're thinking about your own personal leadership and where you want to go. Your values will drive you, whether them or not.
I'd say autonomy is a big value for me as an advanced practice provider. When that gets violated, when I can't act to my fullest capability, my fullest scope of practice for my patients, because that's something that I think PAs and NPs can relate to all over the US. They may want too much from you to do stuff that you may feel may be on the border of your scope of practice, or they may not let you act to the fullest in doing procedures or whatnot when you're able to, when you feel comfortable to. And I like what Amy said, because I think that is actually so important. And I think we talked about this in a previous episode with like the missions with other organizations, is kind of go into what the organization's mission and values are. See how aligned they are. I will say that likely most healthcare organizations are pretty similar, patient focused for the employees, whatnot. I think that values from an organizational standpoint shed light as you start to work there for some time. Like after a couple of years, I'm starting to see like, oh, this is what their values really are and what they value in me. And you can kind of get a better sense from that. But I agree with, if you're in the point of transition, and it is important to ask around and see what the values seem to be from other people's perspectives. And given that, so say you're in a hospital system for years and you're starting to recognize your values, how can you navigate any conflicts between the organizational policies and your personal values that you have in healthcare?
Communication. This is where it's really important to get clear in how you feel about that situation, and then talk to your supervisor, talk to management, find out actually what's going on behind the scenes or in their shoes. And sometimes that understanding and finding out that information is useful. But continued dialogue, I think, is really important. Jillian, who's also in our group, she works specifically in conflict management. So I'm sure she has a lot more to say about that. But things happen. So it's good to look into it and talk to people about it.
I think I'll probably comment the fact that values for an organization may be one thing, mission, values, and then also there's culture. And I think the reality is culture is cultivated by the people who are within the organization, and everyone has a responsibility to craft that. And so it does change. Organizations grow and change. You grow and change as a person, and so do the leaders. And so everyone has the opportunity to express and name what would be a healthy potential value to add to the group. And so even though you may notice something to be not in alignment, it's also an opportunity for you to state that you wonder whether this might be good for the group. Even if you're a dissenter, I know for many people, you're the only one in the room. For many women, like they're the only one in a completely generally male dominated field, for example, and vice versa. And you're still a value add. And so values is just one small way from both the organizational perspective and you as an individual can have a place where you can affect culture change. And it doesn't happen immediately, and it takes continued work. And also, it's also possible.
I like that in recognizing your own value too. And I like the communication. And I think this piggybacks on a lot of the things that we say. And what I would like to add to that is just making sure that your communication is coming well thought out, and in a space where you're able to not act as a knee-jerk kind of reflex, because leaders want something professional, well thought out, and that's how you're going to make changes. And I like the journey aspect of it. It does take time. We all know many things in healthcare works at a snail's pace. So ideally, we wouldn't want it to be that way, but just keeping that in mind so that you don't get frustrated in the journey, and then keep working at it, and then revisiting your values again and seeing what is important for you. Are there negotiables or non-negotiables type thing?
Just hearing you, it just makes me realize, and thinking about what Amy said about communications, how do you communicate? I think a lot of it becomes also having a safe enough space to be authentic. I think about the healthy groups I've been in and the less healthy groups I've been in, and part of it does have to relate to authenticity and being safe enough to, especially to express, especially this day and age with multiple generations working in the workplace, that many years ago, you wouldn't talk about certain things related to the stressors of balancing your personal life, your hobbies, and your family. Now that's expected, that if you don't actually have a culture where it's okay to talk about these types of things and for people to bring their full authentic self, that just, you're just going to lose talent. That's basically what's going to happen. And so really cultivating everyone to be able to communicate in what they wish for and want and hope for in terms of better relationships and better willingness to be authentic with each other is really important, no matter what level you are.
I think this is why we created our Wellness Meant Thrive program, for this reason. And it's that people want their voices heard. How many times are you at work and you may be talking about something that's going on in your life, but you may have a colleague or two that follows up and says, how are things going? Or how is this challenge that you're dealing with? And what are you doing about it? Oftentimes when we talk in healthcare, we just add fuel to the fire and add on to our own experiences and whatnot. And that's why this MedThrive program has been so foundational for so many people, is that it really takes people the next step forward. Okay, well, you're having this challenge, you're having this problem, your values are not connected. What's next for you? And you have a team of people, a community of people who are working with you to make those next positive steps for you. So I guess that leads into this next question in the essence of, what role does value alignment play in your job satisfaction and career longevity? Because I mentioned how when things aren't aligned very well, people burn out. How would you say those two kind of connect with each other?
Yeah, it really is important to align those because I find that the sustainability of staying in something longer term, that when the issues do arise, because there are always challenges on our jobs or in our situation, but when we're aligned with our values, we're able to make it over those challenges easier and have a quicker bounce back in to what you're doing. So it really just helps with having that inner motivation or just that skip in your step that we talk about. When you're just in an environment that it's all aligning, your values, your work, your colleagues, your mentors also, it's also good to align with your mentors. It just allows for a more engaged, fulfilling time at work.
I think for me, both are true. So I think you can be in an environment that is not aligned with you, and you could definitely survive, you can thrive, and you can find the what it means to you in the sphere of other things you're doing. You can give a certain amount, you can have some boundaries, and you can leverage these relationships and it can still be a win. And also you will naturally grow towards other ways where you may be more aligned and you'll accidentally take those pathways as well. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can diversify and that different cups and different alignments will happen for certain values, and you're not gonna get everything out of one location. I think this is where we often have a pitfall where we think this one person or my one mentor or my one organization or my one club is gonna be the only way. The reality is we often teach, at least in our training program, that you need to have a board of directors. You need to have a diversified mentorship group that provides different things for you in your career. Some will be more personal, some will be less personal, some are project-based, some are career-based, some are CV specific, but it's that mix that helps you develop fully as a person. And so I think it's no different with the alignment of your values. I also will say I do think alignment to your values, meaning intrinsic value of the moment with a patient or the moment with a colleague or the moment with your boss, the individual moments is what can get you out of burnout. And you can anchor to just the goodness of the interaction, even despite everything else being horrible, everything being horrible. The system might go bankrupt, bad, terrible, bad. If you can anchor to just the little things that are still there, and that's where gratitude practice comes in, you can survive it to begin to find the light out.
And I think about my own life with that and some of the work that I've done. I work in emergency medicine as a PA, and we all know how ERs can get, but since COVID, we almost called it fast track PCP care sometimes. It's just that you're not always seeing emergencies. You're seeing everything that PCP would see sometimes. And a lot of staff who are burnt out themselves, who are overworked and not enough staff, they're trying to get us to see and discharge patients. And one of my values is that compassionate care and making sure I'm giving my all. And the way I say that is, a patient will often tell you what the problem is just by talking to them. So it's so easy to quickly interrupt them. Like, these are my questions. Do you have fever, chills, chest pain, shortness of breath, vomiting, diarrhea? Let the patient talk and you'll have the diagnosis most of the time just from hearing from them. Number one. Number two, they feel heard. Because how many times, I mean, I've been a patient myself where I've gone into a visit and I just don't feel like I've gotten the attention and the care that I feel like I should have got, especially when my previous insurance, I was paying like $300 just to see my PCP and just get routine care. And you'd want to make sure that visit and that payment is well worth it. And I think we all here understand the pressures that they have, especially with PCPs. Like, they're limited in their time to see patients based off insurance and whatnot. And one thing that I did was I stopped and I said, don't let the charge nurse push me to discharge this, what they say, quote unquote, is an easy one. Because sometimes those quote unquote easy ones are actually very complicated and they're very sick people. They may look well, but it may not be. They can be very sick once you start to investigate a little bit further and to really give your time to these people. And that's what I went into healthcare for, to help people and to really hear them. And that was huge for me. That was a big tipping point in my burnout, was to say, don't go into an ER shift just trying to clear the department out, as many try to push you to do, but instead one at a time and enjoy that patient at that time and work on from there.
Yeah, that's really a point. I just want to just commend you and thank you for all that you do in the department, because I still sometimes miss those days where you just go in and you're just like, I'm here to help, and just be glad that you came in, because I have to admit, there's no patients. We don't have a job. And so it's also really great. Even I often thank them for coming in, because it's good that you came in. Because if you have something that terrible, it's not like it's fun to walk up to the emergency department, get checked in, and know you're going to have a high copay. That's not what anybody wants to do. But clearly something's bothering them enough that they want help, and we're able to help people. So thanks for all that you do in the department.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, and I appreciate that. And that's one thing I often tell all the students we work with, and it's that oftentimes the ER is the last stop for them. You're like the highest level of care that they can get in the moment from an outpatient standpoint, and so only they know their bodies. How many times I've seen people with ruptured appendixes that they may look totally fine, and you push on their abdomen, and it's like, they're like, yeah, it hurts a little bit. And then you CT them, it's like, okay, to the OR. Versus the other person who presents clinically with pain out of proportion. You just may not know. And so it's so important to give your all to these people. Hey, I'm loving where this conversation's going. And it actually reminds me, if any of this is hitting home for you, I just wanted to let you know about something pretty cool we've got going on. We've got this amazing team of 5 coaches who really get what it's like to be in healthcare. And they're available for one-on-one sessions if you want to dig deeper into your own journey. Plus, we've created this whole community called Med Thrive. Think of it as your professional growth space with self-paced learning and monthly group coaching calls where we all support each other. Just putting that out there in case it speaks to you. You can check it out whenever you're ready. Now, let's get back to this great conversation. So we're kind of coming to the end of the podcast, and I have 2 more questions for you guys. And I guess this piggybacks to what we just talked about as well, is, so how can you effectively communicate your values to both colleagues and patients when the times arise? And I guess I could speak to that, actually, just following up on what I just said, was like, oftentimes patients will be like, oh my God, the ER is so busy. I'm like, it is, but I'm here for you now. Like, you're my attention now, and I want to give you my all. I can't even tell you how many times that changes somebody, because if somebody did that to me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like that means so much. Obviously, I have to step out of the room if one of my patients becomes acutely ill. If there's like 20 in the waiting room, I have no control of that. What I have control over is you now. And same thing with my colleagues. And that's what I tell them too. And in this specific values part here is that if they're saying, oh, there's a bunch of people, I'm like, well, they're going to have to wait. That's the emergency room. We're a team triaging the sickest people at once. I'm going to give my all to that one person. That's all I have control over. And if I'm in a room with another person, another provider available, you grab them. And I think communication, is the biggest thing in healthcare that we can do, both to the patients and to the healthcare system.
Thanks for sharing all that, Klaus. That was great. We talk about how to communicate the values, and part of communicating is our actions. And just like you said, showing up, eye contact, letting the person know I'm here for you, and paying attention and being present, not taking your phone out every so often and looking at it. And people really get that. And through your actions, they can really get that you are on the job, you're dedicated, you're skilled, and you're being there for them.
Yeah, I think so much for me is in my educator role, and I think about my value of diversity in terms of really making sure that many different opportunities are there and custom crafted to each person. So for my mentees will know over the last decade, really, it's just, we're going to custom craft everything to you. And so I'm willing to go into the great white yonder with whatever project that we're going to do together, with some confines. I have some recommendations and experience, but the reality is we'll try something new, and trying something new I'm upfront about that in the beginning when I talk about what it's like to work with me as a mentor. So
I love that, being honest with who you are and what it is to work with me. So as we finish this talk, what other strategies can you recommend to healthcare professionals to maintain their values in our challenging healthcare environments?
I think having self-awareness and being able to check in and hear the signals that are coming up to you because they're important, and being able to have the instincts and the response to then engage as need be in the moment. And I think that comes with resilience as well, like ongoing and ongoing. This is how you're checking in with yourself, with your patients, with what's going on, and then acting accordingly.
I really love that, Amy, because I think self-awareness is the key thing, and you don't really realize you bottle up the signals so much. You get really tense, you get really unhappy, you don't know what it is that bothers you, you try to put the thoughts away, you don't have anyone to talk about with it at home, and so debriefing with someone, so I would say I'm like the next step after your self-awareness is debriefing with someone on a regular basis, whether that be a therapist, a mentor, an advisor, a coach, like somebody to process and reflect for yourself or journal. A lot of people do art and journaling for exactly the same reasons. They write to process, they paint to process, because I think in some ways you have to make some sense of it and realign it or not realign it after the self-awareness.
Yeah, and just to circle back to the beginning of this talk of learning what your professional identity is, taking time doing that assessment. And then when you are checking in and feeling something's off, it's like, oh, patient care, that is my main focus here. And I'm not able to do that here. Recognizing it, and then, because sometimes we just can get lost in the fog and not know what's happening. So it's kind of hitting that pause button and really having the instincts to be able to react to what you need to do in the moment.
I think the awareness is huge, and many of us are walking around every day in healthcare unaware of the challenges that we are in. We know that we're unhappy or overwhelmed or incredibly stressed, but really the awareness to what the underlying cause is, whether that be intrinsic or extrinsic, like Lily mentioned earlier, is often unknown to most people. And some people are walking around, have practicing medicine for 20 plus years. There are people that are just entering to the workforce that are developing this so much quicker. And I love the idea of the awareness because that's foundational to make changes. And we are huge at personal development here. And I'll say from personal experience, it really required working with somebody, working with a coach to really figure that out in a way that was kind of confidential, but unbiased, and in a way that was always for me, because we are all our own unique humans, and what our challenges are and how to free ourselves from them and come up with solutions are completely unique to us. So what may work for Lily may not work for me. And I find that journey to be beautiful. So if that is something you struggle with, you want something more rapid fire, please reach out to us and book a discovery call with any one of us. And we would be happy to start planning that map for you out of the fire and into endless opportunities. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll see you at next week's episode.
Thanks so much for listening. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share with a colleague who would benefit. Together, we can transform healthcare one person at a time. Find us anywhere you find your podcasts. Ready to take your healthcare leadership journey to the next level? Book a discovery call free at transforminghealthcarecoaching.com to explore our personalized coaching packages designed specifically for healthcare professionals like you.